get to Trey Yingst. He's live in Tel Aviv. What's the mood and the view from there?
Yeah, Bill, Dana, good morning. Overnight, the United States used 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs to target an Iranian ammunition depot. The president releasing some of the video on Truth Social showing significant damage and destruction outside the city of Isfahan. While President Trump is still offering Iran a chance at a diplomatic solution, the U.S. and Israel are ramping up pressure on the Islamic Republic.
The video the president posted last night of Esfahan, an ammo depot struck by U.S. bombers. You see, you don't get to see many of those videos because, as a reminder, Iran has still shut off the internet to 99.9% of its population.
Iran has continued its ballistic missile attacks against Israel, with 2 waves targeting central Israel last night and another 2 cluster munition strikes this morning against Tel Aviv. The Iranians also struck a Kuwaiti oil tanker with a drone off the coast of Dubai early this morning. Officials say the fire caused by that attack is now under control. While Gulf countries and Israel repel Iranian attacks, Israel has expanded ground operations against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Dozens of militants were killed there in recent days, according to the IDF. And today, Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, announced that Israel is building a buffer zone in southern Lebanon up to the Litani River.
All houses in the border-adjacent villages in Lebanon will be destroyed in accordance with the Rafah and Beit Hanun models in Gaza to remove the border-adjacent threats once and for all from the residents of the north.
The IDF announced that 4 additional Israeli soldiers were killed yesterday, bringing the total since the Lebanon operation began to 10. On Monday, a funeral was held for one of those soldiers, just 19 years old.
Enough already. Enough of these funerals. Enough of this pain of children who are living and lying here in the ground. What is the value of all these lives? What is the value of all life? Enough of the wars. Make peace already.
This week, the Israeli people will mark the Jewish holiday of Passover, some of them celebrating their Seders in bomb shelters. Bill, Dana?
Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv, thank you.
So Dan Hoffman, Fox News contributor, former CIA chief of station. Dan, good morning to you. Here is Caroline Levitt yesterday at the podium at the press conference at the White House.
Despite all of the public posturing you hear from the regime and false reporting, talks are continuing and going well. What is said publicly is, of course, much different than what's being communicated to us privately. If the Iranians reject this golden opportunity, the greatest military in the history of the world continues to stand by to provide President Trump with every option available to ensure this regime continues to pay a grave price.
Dan, who do you think the United States can communicate with right now, actively and effectively in Iran, if anyone?
Well, I think we are communicating, as Secretary Hegseth said, with our military campaign. So that's for sure what we're doing. I just don't think we've quite reached the tipping point where we can induce Iran to enter into negotiations in good faith. Just in the last hour, Lucas Tomlinson reported on Iran striking the UAE with 8 ballistic missiles, 4 cruise missiles, and 36 drones. They attacked a Kuwaiti oil tanker off the coast of Dubai. So they still retain some capability in spite of the massive damage that we've inflicted on their defense industrial base. Iran is not publicly demanding an end to this war. There are some behind-the-scenes indirect negotiations, discussions in Pakistan, reportedly through the Iranian Speaker of Parliament, but I would not characterize those negotiations at this point as anything which would lead to an end to this war, at least diplomatically.
There was a report in the Wall Street Journal saying that Trump tells aides he's willing to end war without reopening Hormuz. Administration officials assess that forcing the waterway back open would mean extending the military mission. In addition, the president posting today, and Pete Hegseth talking about it during his briefing, that the president is telling other countries, like, we don't need this open as much as you do, so you should step in and help us. What are the chances of that?
So I think the president might have been seeking to gain some leverage over our allies and partners whom he hopes would join us in an effort to open the Strait of Hormuz. I think it's in the United States' interest that we do that. We don't want Iran to have a stranglehold on the global price of oil and gas. That would certainly impact the global economy and our economy as well. By extension, Iran would also be extorting the rest of the world and collecting tariff money that they could use to reconstitute their weapons of mass destruction. So I don't think that's how we see this war ending. But I do think the president wants to pressure our allies and partners to join us in an effort to open the strait.
Pete Hegseth said just an hour ago that in the last 24 hours, the fewest missiles have been launched from Iran that they have seen since the conflict began. So that stretches over a 30-day period. Dan, at times the Iranians have shown fairly good accuracy. What do you make of the Russian assistance that's been given on behalf of Moscow? And what can you say about North Korean ballistic missile technology aiding Iran as well right now?
Well, Iran's missile technology for sure came from North Korea. And Russian tactical intelligence has been really valuable to the Iranians. The Russians, remember, provided tactical assistance to the Taliban as well, so they could kill U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. The Russians are able to give Iran satellite overhead reconnaissance and tactical intelligence. That's what the Russians do. It's their currency. They have a very close relationship with Iran. Remember that Iran built factories to produce drones in Russia. Now Russia's returning the favor by sending those drones to Iran. It's in Russia's interest that this war carry on as long as possible and that they degrade the U.S. Reputation in the region and beyond, as well as our military capability and our ability to project force. I think that's what we're seeing here from Russia and Iran. It's this what we see in the outgrowth of the war in Ukraine, where we've got this axis of dictatorships, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China on one side, and the West and Ukraine on the other side.
Can I ask one last question then about the Houthis? Because they had been relatively quiet until this past weekend when they decided to join the fight. What can happen there? Because that's another strait.
Right. The Bab al-Mandeb Strait, which controls the Red Sea and links to the Suez Canal, that could likewise have a significant impact on trade from the Middle East. And so that's also something that we need to be prepared for. I'm sure that that Secretary Hegseth and his team have a contingency plan to deal with that, along with our allies and partners. But you're right to highlight that. There's more potentially that Iran could do. And remember that Lebanese Hezbollah has also been taking the fight to Israel.
Dan, thank you. To be continued. Pete Hegseth was asked how much longer. He said 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, as pretty much as long as it takes. Dan, thanks. More to come on this, okay? Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.